Hello and welcome to the Inside Social Work podcast. Join me as we go behind the scenes into different fields of social work, share candid conversations, practical insights, and thought-provoking ideas. Together we'll explore the vulnerable moments, share our struggles and triumphs, and reflect on the day-to-day experiences that shape us as social workers. I'm your host, Marie Vakakis. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Today I have with me a fellow accredited mental health social worker and private practice co-director or founder, owner, all of that, of the Centre Self Collective, Amy Howell. Welcome, Amy.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
There was a million topics that we could have discussed because you were a former listener of the podcast.
Yes,
and then we became co-workers and, it's been several years now, long journeys, but we chose to talk a little bit about student placements in private practice, which is, I guess, a current topic of interest for you.
Yes, it's a little side passion for me, student placement. So, yeah, I'm very excited to talk about it today.
Well, that's a really great segue. Before we get into what attracted you to this passion, tell us a little bit about your journey, like your social work journey up to now. Who are you? What have you been doing?
So as you mentioned, I'm an accredited mental health social worker. I'm also an EMDR accredited practitioner and also a mindfulness teacher. So I've been working in the field for about just over 12 years now. And I've had a range of roles, I guess, kind of varying from like community mental health. I actually started off in youth work when I started in the social work field. And then I moved into the drug and alcohol space. I've done some work with gender-based violence, a little bit of homelessness, crisis intervention. And I worked in management for a few years as well in community mental health. And then, yes, now I'm here in private practice. I think, mental health has just always been such a passion of mine. And it's one of the reasons that led me to, co-found Centre Self Collective with Tamara Broughton. And so, at our private practice, we focus on delivering, like individual therapy, group therapy, EMDR intensives, and we do supervision with allied health professionals.
Juggling lots of things. I'd love to do maybe a whole episode on mindfulness. Maybe we can kind of flag that as something for the future.
As a topic, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you started having students on placement a couple of years ago in this role, because I remember there was, in your other roles, you loved having students on placement, and then COVID happened.
Yeah. So basically, as soon as we started Centre Self Collective, we've pretty much had students from early days. So we founded Centre Self Collective in 2021, and we're up to our 8th student now. So but prior to that, my journey with student placements began in 2016 when I was working in community mental health. I designed like a structured kind of placement program, and so since then I've just had students nonstop and really love it. I've had probably more than, I was trying to count the other day. I think I've had more than 40 students in total over the years. So so it's really exciting to bring it to the private practice space, and it's such a unique and dynamic space. And I really love what we've been building so far. So really excited to I guess talk about it. And I guess it's a unique space because I guess private practice isn't really spoken a lot about in universities for social work students. So it's really interesting to bring students along and open up, I guess, doors for like what's possible in social work, which is really exciting. And I guess I've always been really, as I said, drawn to mental health, but I do really love the teaching and the mentoring kind of component of all of that, and really passionate about teaching social workers about ethical and sustainable practice. So, I think that's, really important for the future of the field for social work, to be honest.
There's so many bits in that around it not being talked about. I don't think it's mentioned at all. And I kept thinking about, and I'm kind of going off a bit of a tangent, but when we talk about what makes us different in this space, I found it sometimes hard to articulate why what we do is very different, because to get to an accredited mental health social worker position, it's that additional learning around the focused psychological strategies and formulating sort of a case conceptualization. And now that I'm teaching social work theory at the moment, and the students are being introduced to things like ecosystems and ecological systems theory and strength-based theory, and I'm like, well, that's the difference, is from day one well, I mean, they're second year students, but from very early on, they're really primed to think about the person in their context and to see maybe challenges that might arise, whether it's, we'll talk mental health because that's often what people come to us for, as part of a bigger picture. And so how do we then affect on all those different layers of that ecosystem? And some of that's advocacy, which a lot of, I don't know about you, but a lot of the other practice owners I know have something on the side, whether it's something they campaign for or they advocate for, or letters that they write, or like there's that advocacy component. There's also recognizing systemic injustices and then zooming into how do I support this person's mental health. So we do come at it from a different perspective because we're trained initially in a very broad and open-minded way. Did any of that make sense?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Marie, because, I think the foundations of our social work training really kind of sits nicely in understanding like all the systems that we work within. And I think, at a policy level, at an environmental level, looking at families, looking at all the different things that really impact a person, I think, one of the strengths of social work. So, I think that's a really excellent point.
Yeah, it's hard because I know when I used to do the student field education handbooks, it could be really tricky for students to try and relate what they'd learn into this context, and it would be going back and forth trying to kind of figure it out. How do you, what kinds of things do students do on placement in a private practice? So you've worked with students across different organisations and in previous roles. What are some of the things that they might do if they're in a private practice like yours?
Yeah, there's so many opportunities, which is really exciting. I guess at Centre Self Collective, we really try to give students a mix of like some of that clinical side of the work, the intake and inquiry kind of space, the administrative, and also try to get them involved in some kind of like research or project-based kind of role, I guess. So we try really hard to give them a mix, and I could list like so many different tasks, but maybe what I'll do is I'll speak to some of the students that we've had and just give you a bit of an overview of maybe what they've done. So one of our students last semester had the opportunity to co-facilitate like a 10-week ADHD group therapy program for adults, and that was alongside a clinical psychologist outside of CSC, so someone that's a sole clinician in the community. And that's part of what we do at CSC with our student placement program is we're trying to kind of create a bit of a community and to create, I guess, spread that kind of shared learning across other practitioners and group practices as well. So we'd very carefully kind of paired this student with this clinical psychologist, and this student was under supervision and was trained to kind of do some of the group intake assessments. So just kind of running through a series of questions where I guess they're kind of sounding out if someone is ready for group therapy or if they're appropriate for group therapy. And then the student probably shadowed the clinician probably for like the first half, like the first 5 weeks of that group therapy program. And then towards the second half and the end of the group therapy, they started taking on like really small bits of like maybe a psychoed piece or running a therapeutic technique, again, of course, under the supervision of the psychologist. And so, that was a great experience, I think, for that student to have that exposure, seeing something from like, starting and onboarding everyone and then seeing it to the end and getting to see and observe, I guess, some of those like therapeutic techniques in real time kind of thing. So that was a focus for one of our student placements. Another student that we've had focused primarily on the like intake and inquiry kind of duties, and kind of, I guess, gaining some experience of what it's like to support people that might be, reaching out for the first time. And I think, like we take the view that the intake processes are like one of the most critical aspects of our service. I think it's the first point of connection for people that are reaching out, and it can really set the tone for their therapeutic experience. So, yeah, we took a lot of time to, I guess, support that student with developing some skills around ensuring that people are feeling safe and heard and supported when they're reaching out for mental health care. So, yeah, there was a lot of, I guess, like kind of skills that were involved with that kind of focus for that student. So really looking at things like sounding out what they're looking for, sounding out who on the team might be a good fit, assessing their readiness for therapy, and utilizing all of those active listening skills and soft counseling skills to build rapport. And then, of course, the other side of it is that there's some admin like stuff to get across as well, figuring out how to navigate referral pathways and looking for alternative services if we're not the appropriate service for them. So students might take the time to kind of research some of that stuff and whatnot, and understanding things like Medicare processes. And, so that was a bit of a mix of the direct and the like administrative kind of side. That was a really big focus for a student that we had. Do you want me to give you some more? I've got more.
No, that's a really good start, because I've seen you do some of the background work in its early days around how to, so intentionally structure that to have sort of an observe kind of and then independent. And I think, the students who get to work with you will be very lucky, because you've put in a lot of thought, and it's very much a job of love having students on placement. While, I've had good and bad experiences on both sides, it's a very time-intensive, costly exercise in most organizations. So it's really hard, because I remember as a student being like, oh, they're getting all this free labor. But then when you're, especially maybe in our line of work in a very small business, it's every hour we spend with them is an hour we're not seeing clients, and that has a direct cost. So it is a very costly exercise to have students on placement. And so to be so thought out and intentional and structure such a good learning experience, that takes a lot of dedication. So kudos.
Thank you. Yeah, it does. It is quite time consuming. And I think, with the right planning, it can be set up well, I suppose. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a time intensive exercise. Yeah.
One of the things that I speak about a lot, and I'm doing at the moment some reflective practice groups for other organizations, and I'm so shocked that I'm glad they've done it now, but it's shocked that it hasn't happened earlier. We talk a lot about critical social work practice and reflective practice, and how that's often done is in supervision, group supervision, individual supervision, both. And that's such an important part, especially in private practice. As AMHSWs, we need to log certain hours. It's not very many. It's like 10, which is probably not enough. But how do you embed that into the placements? Like, how do you create supervision that's not just task management and allocation, but allows for some of that deeper, richer reflection, I suppose?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, because I think that is one of the biggest differences that I've experienced moving from working for organizations going into private practice. I think it is, largely not because it's not valued in organizations, but it is something that gets deprioritized, I think, in a way. And the focus shifts to, as you said, like the tasks, because people are just so stretched thin, and managers and clinicians are just like, they tend to be juggling so much. So I think that, I guess the other thing to add with that as well is that what's probably really common in organizations is you might do supervision with your line manager, which I guess like they kind of have that dual kind of hat where they might want to kind of hold space for that reflective practice, but they also have to have oversight of the compliance and the KPIs and the caseload numbers and whatnot. And so I think that, moving from organizations to going into private practice, I think that's where private practice maybe stands out a little bit, or maybe it's just a little bit more of the norm that you have external supervision. And so I think that changes the kind of tone for the experience. And so, I think it's really important to make sure that students have that understanding of, especially at placement, what good supervision is and what it should look like before going into the field and potentially experiencing that. And I'm not saying you can't experience good supervision in organizations, of course. I think there's some really amazing supervisors out there for sure. But yeah, I've definitely, from my experience, had the mix of, seeing a supervisor where it is more task focused. And I've also had supervisors in organizations where there is a bit more space for that reflective practice. But just being aware of that distinction, I think, is really important to teach students from the get-go before they go out into the field. And so, I guess we do the mix of individual supervision and group supervision. And we've spent a lot of time, I guess, like being familiar, because we've done it for so many years, knowing the learning plan really well. And so really tailoring some of those conversations to key areas of learning and supporting people with that. I think, good supervision should really help students and clinicians to slow down and to, I guess, be really honest about, like what's kind of happening for them in their work and what's coming up for them, how they're showing up for their clients, how they can show up for themselves in the work. And it's a space where you can really flesh out some, ethical dilemmas or explore dynamics with clients. And having some conversations as well about making sure you're looking after yourself, preventing burnout and things like compassion fatigue, of course. So I guess we just really try to role model that to students and have really explicit conversations around what it's supposed to look like.
I love that, because it's part of what makes placement so valuable is you get to integrate all of these hypotheticals and theoretical things and give it a go, and learning how to be a social worker in context. That's really important, and supervision is such a big part of that. I know I've done in the first few seasons of the podcast, a couple of episodes on supervision, but I might revisit that, because it's like it is a bit of a dual relationship. There is a power imbalance, and we're adults in the workplace. And so it's finding this balance of how to make the most of it, because there are some things you can control as the supervisee. And then as a supervisor, there's ways to, not everyone's a really good teacher. And not everyone's approachable or shows that level of connection or vulnerability. And I had a moment in supervision. I was running supervision for a group recently, and as you were talking, I was thinking, I'm like, oh, how does this fit? It popped into my mind, so it feels kind of relevant, that it was a group. They don't know each other very well, and they kind of, the conversation just died. And a part of me was going to be like, I almost want to be like, well, you get out what you put in. If you've got nothing to tell me, off you go. And I was like, well, they don't know. And so I was kind of racking my brain for some activities that I have been on the receiving end of that have been really good. And I brought one to their attention of thinking about a client story that has changed how they do their practice. And they each had a few moments to reflect, and they all had a story of working with someone or a family that since then has changed how they do their work. And so then we got to reignite the whole conversation, and then that kind of naturally evolved into a conversation around transference and countertransference. And it was really, I had almost like a little pat on the back moment. I was like, I could have easily just said, well, let's just be done early. But that wouldn't have been helpful to them. And sometimes they don't know what they don't know to bring to the session. So actually being able to pull out what are some memorable cases, what are some memorable experiences, and then through prompting and kind of prodding at a few of the different things, we got to a really good conversation about transference, countertransference, and eventually practitioner burnout. And I hear some of what you're saying, in what you were describing, is some of that is what you're trying to do. It's like, here are the task-based things, and how do we pull out a little bit more from you? How do we get you to reflect on what's happening for you, what's behind some of those emotions, feelings, thoughts, as well as integrating learning? It's that sense of self.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, you really dug deep there to get people to reflect. And I think it just takes like a little bit of that kind of support to like really drop in to get into that reflective practice. And it depends on like, I guess, how busy we are, how overworked we are, if we are experiencing burnout, how we can kind of really tap into that space. Because if we're so full, it's really hard to get into that space. So I think sometimes it's important to have a good supervisor who can help you really, like with that slowing down or asking really creative questions to get people thinking outside the box. And, I think that that's so crucial, to just get into that space, the reflective space.
It's really hard because a part of me, as you're saying, reflective questions, I almost felt like saying, here's a list of reflective questions that you can, and it's tricky because it's not, some people might like a list of what they're going to talk about in supervision, but that's not always, it's a learning environment, but it's not sort of didactic. It's not just you listen to me waffle on, but that might not have been established yet. Like for some people, especially if they've come into the MSW program through another industry, supervision was a bad thing. It meant you did something wrong.
Yeah.
And so being able to come in and reflect and, talk, you might talk about a case study. You might be like, oh, I've got this client named Marie. I'm finding her very difficult. And, your supervisor might be like, and what does that evoke for you? Oh, blah, blah, blah. And then you might get onto a conversation, but it's really hard. Like you don't necessarily know exactly what you're going to talk about in supervision because it emerges as you're talking about it.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
I probably would be a difficult client. My poor therapist. They can deal with me in supervision. So supervision is one of those really connecting parts for a student on placement and for all of us. Like we still have supervision. We've got multiple supervisors for different modalities often. How do you also combat some of that isolation that comes with private practice? Because even in a big team, and when we've worked together, we've had our team at the biggest, it's still ships in the night. And you're often walking past each other or you're boiling the kettle in that 10 minutes between clients. And most of the time, 5-6 sessions a day, you're in your room with a client. How do you help students feel connected when it can be a very isolating role day to day?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that, private practice is often, that very experience, or it can evoke like that image of somebody kind of a clinician like sitting in an office all day seeing clients like back to back and that kind of thing. And I think for a lot of private practitioners, the experience can be isolating. And I think at CSC, that is something we are trying to, I guess, combat like in general. And we are actively exploring ways to foster collaboration and connection among other social workers in private practice. And I guess, we see like students like playing a really big role in that effort. And it's also something that we're hoping to research as well. But to ensure from like the student perspective and like just from speaking from like the day-to-day aspect, we do involve students in things like, our team meetings, our case formulation sessions. We also run like clinical skills groups and we have peer supervision and we do a lot of professional development together as a team. So we involve students in all of that kind of stuff, which is just the general day-to-day. But another initiative that we've sort of taken on is we have like a structured kind of learning program that's open to all students on placement. It doesn't have to be in private practice. And so we try to connect other students together, and we've been basically delivering, again, like since we started CSC, delivering a series of webinars and workshops to engage students. And it's really about, I guess, that gap that we spoke about before, that it's not really something that's spoken about in university. So just supporting students with and giving them real insights into what private practice is actually like and what the opportunities are. And we run sessions on skills and reflective topics. And also we talk about modalities like EMDR and schema therapy. And again, just the broader landscape of private practice, I suppose. So, so we've been running that, and that's something that we do. And we've found that that's been worked really well for students. We've had a lot of really positive feedback from students about the learning program that we have. And actually for the first time this semester, we are opening it up, like, I guess, to the community, to other people in private practice, to, again, like other students. And that's, like, I guess, part of wanting to build that sense of community and connection with others in the field. So yes, and I'm very looking forward to you, Marie. You're going to be one of the guest speakers that'll be joining the Like Learning series. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to your session later in the year on working with young people and families, which will be really great. So I guess that's the other thing. We've expanded the guest list, I suppose, to the program, and that's really kind of fostering, I guess, some of that opportunities for collaboration and giving students exposure to other people in the field, and which I think is really wonderful.
It really is, because I know you learn so much when you can kind of directly apply something to what you're doing. Right. And so being able to have little webinars, that can be sort of hours worth of content that you know, might have taken you hours to learn in abstract ways at uni. So being able to have something that's very related to that field, and then maybe within a week or two you get to maybe apply some of that learning, it's so valuable.
Yeah, and I think it's really I guess about like fostering that learning, I think. And I guess that's like why we love placement so much, is that we do truly feel that it's such an enriching experience both ways. And I think, you know, students come with like, you know, fresh new perspectives, curiosity. Yeah. And I guess like we hope to like contribute to that learning as well. And it's a bit of a mutual exchange. So yeah, it's really cool.
What are some of the topics you've got coming up?
I just ran one on just the considerations for social workers going into private practice. And then I've got another one in a couple of weeks that I'm going to be running on how to, I forgot what I've titled it, but it's something about how to prepare like for your first session. So like what are all the important things that you need to cover off and explain in the first session. So just supporting, that one's a bit more of a workshop style, because we'll be inviting people to have a go at kind of writing out what they might say and kind of practicing together. So yeah, because I guess it's just about as you're a new emerging social worker, finding your own style and language is so important. And so yeah, a lot of our learning program has some of those like practical elements where there's some role plays and whatnot to kind of build up that confidence and experience with working with people.
Sounds really great, and hopefully you'll get a really engaged group, and we'll pop a link in the show notes to where people can find upcoming sessions.
Yeah,
upcoming
lovely.
learnings. So there's a lot that you can see how much goes into doing this well. And this is all self-directed and self-funded. It's not some big organization that has a budget to create videos and an LMS portal and an intake, sort of an induction process. So it's a lot of work. If someone's listening and thinking, I want to take a student on placement, but now I'm just thinking it's way too much work. How do we, like, what are some of the considerations? If someone wants to give this a go, they don't have, I mean, this has come from years of experience that you've built and enhanced your offerings. What are some of the things that someone listening might want to consider if they want to take a student on placement? What are the sort of the starting points?
Yeah, I mean, well, actually last year I had the opportunity to be part of a reference group with the Victorian University's Field Education Network, also what I call VUFEN. And basically VUFEN, yeah.
I love that. That sounds like the name of a dog biscuit company. VUFEN.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we developed a bit of a reference group, and in that reference group, we developed some guidelines for placements in private practice. And this was a bit of an initiative that was partly funded by the Lyra Taylor Fund grant from the Victorian branch of the ASW. And so as part of this project, we kind of drafted some guidelines. And then I believe, Helen Hicks was engaged to conduct some consultations and ran some focus groups on the pilot program, which was the draft version of the guidelines. And now the final guidelines are available to support people in private practice who might be thinking about taking on a student. And it's also just a great tool for students to look at as well, to get an idea of what placement might be like for them. And it's also a great guide for universities too. So, I think that would be like a big piece of advice to kind of have a read over that. It's got some good examples of like what tasks might look like and how to structure it. It has a bit of like an overview on, I guess, kind of structuring placements in a way that has like a beginning, middle, and end phase, and just kind of like what are some of the things that we might be looking for or expecting for students in each phase. And so it gives like, a really good guide, just kind of covering off all of those things. And, it's quite, like straightforward, I suppose, in a sense, but just really good to get a visual and to like kind of help make like some of because structuring this, and 500 hours is a long time. It's like, what is the student going to do for all that time?
So we've talked about the support that you put into a placement for students in particular in private practice. You've looked at some of the frameworks and I guess not legislation, that's not the right word, but creating some curriculum or some structure through FUFN, the dog biscuit sounding name. Is there anything, take away all of that just on the personal side, like as a social worker, like is there anything you've taken away from that experience? Like what have you learned?
Yeah, I think for me, having students, I guess it's this constant reminder that you never stop learning, I guess. And I think having students, it also really reminds me about the importance of having a mentor. And not just for students, but for all of us, I think, at different points in your career, it's so important to have the right people around you to support you and that can help you grow. And so I hope that I've had lots of really great supervisors and really good mentors throughout my career. And so I hope that, I don't know, I guess doing this kind of stuff, it's like a way to give back to that and help students start their career, I guess, on the right foot. So I guess, and just to add to that as well, the other thing that comes to my mind is that this whole experience with students is very energy giving for me. So I think that, as we've already discussed, private practice can be really isolating. And so just having students around can bring this really beautiful energy and sense of curiosity. And I think that kind of makes it come back full circle for me, because not only do you never stop learning, having students also gives you that constant reminder of why you're doing what you do and why, I love social work. And, it's those moments of like, I guess when you see students asking those big questions, or they're grappling with an ethical dilemma, or they have those moments where something just clicks. And that really, I think, I guess, reignites something in me. And it brings me back to the heart of the work. And it also, I guess the other thing is that students also help me stay accountable as well, and accountable to that learning. And it's nice to be on that journey with them and staying connected to your values. So I guess as much as I hope to contribute to the growth of students, I too learn from them as well. And that really enriches my own practice and my own journey in my career. So
I love that. I agree with the energizing and the connection. And the accountability, sometimes in order to actually do the things you're going to do. But when people ask why you do something or how you did it, like to break it down, that does take a moment to think, oh, how do I articulate why I chose to do what I chose to do, especially in a therapy context, like if we're looking at counseling, trying to pull those skills apart and articulate them. It's quite tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I just love the curiosity and the talking about what we're doing and why and how. And it's just a lot of fun.
I feel like it happened in a blink of an eye that I was once a student and now I'm in the position I'm in. Is there anything that surprised you, like maybe as a kind of last question to wrap up with, is anything that surprised you about being on this side of things now at the level you're at in your career and, having a whole kind of private practice?
Anything that's surprising? Do you mean from like a student perspective?
Just that the students, either an imprint that they've left or something it's evoked in you, or maybe they held a mirror up to something that was a little bit squirmy or uncomfortable, or even a high five, to past Amy? Like, yeah, you kind of did this well. Like, has it kind of done anything for you?
Yeah, I guess I don't know, I guess it's just kind of shown me that you can really build, like, I guess, a community. And I guess, I don't know, the importance of like creating that peer connection as well. So I feel like, yeah, I just really want to amplify like the role that students can have. And yeah, I'm not sure if that makes sense or if I'm answering the question correctly.
Yeah, it's just a reflection. I think that's really lovely.
Yeah.
So you've got your series that you're running of different educational components. Yep. So we'll put links to all of that in the show notes. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, just you can get in touch with me on socials, probably, or email, which we can add in the show notes and whatnot. But yeah, email or contacting me on socials is probably good.
Great. I love your enthusiasm for student placements, and it sounds like it's been a very rewarding experience for you and for the students. Having met a couple of your previous students, they were so thrilled and excited to be working with you and getting their teeth into some really valuable work. But I love the structure you'd put in place. So well done.
Thank you so much, Marie.